Apologize for the technical difficulties as qualifying reaches its final minute or so for today's action for the Obscure Car Challenge at the Nurburgring. Justin Prince, Stefan Schalacker, along with Jack Worrell in the broadcast booth with Joe Peak in the director's seat. Most of the field has now set their qualifying times for today's action. More than 30 competitors, to recap, are set to take part in today's event. Jack, as we approach the final minutes before we head towards your starting grid, your thoughts on what to expect today?
I think what to expect is going to be I'm going to be here all day, just sort of outlining what I'm expecting. I'm going to just to name a few. I'm guessing it's going to be lots of maybe inter-class battles as well, because as we're looking at one of the Ford Mustangs at the moment, they are incredibly quick on the straight, but from experience, the Jetta is much planted and much quicker around the corners. So we might see a bit of rivalry between those two classes. We've also got the GT1s and the GT3s to look forward to. We know that the drivers can race them really closely. So lots to look forward to, and with 70 minutes of racing on the way, we're going to enjoy it all.
All set to take a look towards how these drivers will start today's action with your starting grid as the competitors make their way to the circuit. FDR Esports has a 1-2 with Jeffrey Belk leading them to the green flag with Eduardo Gil in second spot. Jack Kiwakowski starts in third position with FDR Esports' Chevalier starting in fourth. Blue Goose Racing starts in fifth with Team Pepto-Bismol starting in sixth, looking to avoid any heartburn and heartbreak. Rootfinger Sim Driver starts in seventh with Really Slow Motion Racing putting up a respectable 7:59 qualifying in eighth. Rounding out the top 10 starting positions today, FDR Esports is Gary Brown and Simkowski Racing with Global Sim Racing's Neil Simkowski. Rest of the competitors in the GT1s are Team Bulmer Racing and Half Mast. Stefan, your thoughts on the GT3s?
Well, it's most definitely going to be a very interesting race as Sorg Orange Ford Esports they take over at the pole there, but they have a gap of nearly 6 seconds to Goose in Russ in second place, while Valhalla SimSport is in third, FTR Esports fourth, RDS iRacing team they are fifth, JFH Plant Racing sixth place with Team Amalparit in seventh, KF Motorsport they are overall 20th already, Valhalla SimSport 21st overall, and Team Amag Bradshaw in 22nd overall, but that mid-pack very tightly packed, so it is going to be probably a very interesting race for the mid-spots of that class.
And Jack, believe you also have the final two classes today featuring the rest of your starters.
I do indeed. So on pole position, albeit the front row, it's only occupied by 2 cars in the Ford Mustang classes, as we only have 2 Ford Mustangs out on the circuit. We've got Rash Racing taking pole position with a 9-minute 21.613 with Daniel Rash starting that car. We've then got Famous Crip with a 10-minute 06.233 with Roger Gregory lining that car up in P2. Moving on to the Volkswagen Jetta TDIs, we've got JJJ starting on pole position with a 9-minute 38.523 with Jake Johansson starting that car. Then we've got Team Gustavo Ciafani starting in P2, P26 overall. RPM Racing line up P3. Valhalla SimSport Diesel Power starting in P4. George Racing Esport Team starting row 3 in P5, P29 overall. Spoolin Racing starting in P6. Outrun Motorsports P7. Team Stephanie Barras starting in P8. George Racing Esport Team Green starting in P9. And FTR Esports Sofa starting in P10.
Let's look at all your starters once again for today's action as all the drivers are making their way towards the start zone for today. As mentioned, hour and 10 minutes on the distance, 1 pit stop expected and required for these drivers to make it to the green flag. The start zone at this track will be right where the beginning of the pit wall will be when they re-enter the Grand Prix portion of the circuit today. It's FDR Esports in control of the field for today's action as they look to bring the whole field to green for the Obscure Car Challenge on the Global Sim Racing Channel for the Nurburgring. It's Jeffrey Belk, the control car, with Eduardo Gil starting alongside him, his teammate. All set to get racing. To the start zone they go. Engines are revving. We're underway for the Obscure Car Challenge at the Nurburgring. Their car zoomed down the front straightaway, looking to get single file. Jack Kielnikowski trying to go down to the bottom side. His Corvette goes to the left side of the racetrack into the first chicane. Already a couple drivers, Stefan, have had trouble towards the back of the field in this race. 2 drivers off the grid. That held up a majority of their classes who are getting ready to go to the start zone.
Elling Bulmer and Niels Jankowski, those two that spun themselves out, but they're well clear of the GT3 field already as they take the green flag. Now Niklas Schneider is going to get away very nicely. They're ahead of second place Dan Müller and Alexander Veldman, but Veldman and Müller are side by side down the front stretch as they clear the pit wall. They're getting ready to brake for the first time also for the Yokohama hairpin. And it seems like Dan Müller on the outside of that first turn is going to take away the second place from Alexander Veldman.
Clean for them. The 2 Ford Mustangs have already got zooming away, currently separated by a couple car lanes, but the Jettas are all set to pass by Jack at the front stretch.
They really are now just about to pass pit exit. It's all down to Jake Johansson modulating when he puts his foot to the floor. He does it now. You can't really see it because they don't pick up speed massively quickly. But the Triple J car is still leading the way. And then we've got Team Gustavo Ciafani looking to the outside going into turn 1. He's going to be very brave if he can get the movement around there. But we know the Jetta has got the turning in potential, cutting across the nose of the RPM Racing Jetta. I think we had a bit of contact in the background there, but as far as I'm aware, it looks like everybody has managed to negotiate turn 1 cleanly and are continuing on.
For the most part, clean start for a majority of the field to begin today's action here at the Nurburgring. The Jetta is currently working their way single file for the most part through their section. The lead group has already made their way into the Nordschleife portion. Jeffrey Bullock still clean from the start. Gill with a bit of left front damage from the curving. Then it's Kielikowski still in third. Chevalier ends in fourth. And Diego Jimenez Hormilia, known more so from his exploits in the MX-5, rounding out the top 5 in the GT1s early on. Sorg Sport Esports leading by 10 car lengths into the third section, while Rash Racing leads by is in break behind Famous Shrip for their position in the Fords. Meanwhile, those Jettas continue to shuffle about single file for the time being. Overall, an action-packed start to this one, Stefan.
Most definitely, as also the Jettas are getting ready to hit the track for the very first time on the Nordschleife. As we can see them now come through the NGK chicane. Jake Johansson leads the pack into the Nordschleife for the very first time. Cars bouncing around very heavily over the bumps on the inside there of the connection turn. But they all make those bumps very nicely and very easily. As in the GT3s, we have a little bit of a battle going into Schwedenkreuz, Tapia versus Nick Rosenbrock. That's the 017 and the 55 battling it out for fourth in class, actually. And Adolfo was able to get that pass done in his red.
Yes, that's the roof specifically that's trying to hold up in front for the time being, battle against the BMW. And there are some differences, mind you, Jack, with some of these cars. There is no BOP for this event, keep in mind. What's some of the strengths and weaknesses, in your opinion, in regards to these two makes?
By the looks of it, the BMW has got that massive GT3 aero package on it. You can see the splitter, the canons, the massive rear wing mounted to the trunk, in theory, of that BMW Z4. So I've got a feeling the BMW will be quicker in the corners and feel a bit more planted. But then you've got to remember it will have all that extra air pushing against the rear wing and the front of the car on the straight. So maybe the rough could be a bit quicker on the straight. So quite an evenly matched cars, because there seems to be an equal amount of straights and corners here at the Nürburgring Nordschleife. So going into the first lap is really, like you said earlier, the unknown for these drivers, because they might have raced closely but never door to door like we've seen earlier on in this race. So we've got lots to look forward to. Back up to the front of the field though, it looks like Jack Kulowski is going to, or Kulikowski, pardon me, is going to be coming under pressure very shortly from the FTR Esports Chevalier car, because they are on the back straight. The Aston Martin is looking slightly quicker, but Stefan, this race isn't going anywhere.
No, most definitely not. You really have to be careful, as we also actually have now only one more Ford remaining, as Gregory did crash out himself, sadly, very early in this lap.
Taking a look at your top drivers, still separated by just about 7/8 of a second up towards the front. They've already pulled 3 seconds on P3 in the class. And a bit of a different line there from Gil, that time not electing to take the banking surprisingly there. Lose them a little bit of time as a result, Stefan, as another crash apparently with the 31.
Yeah, and this happened right there before, I don't know, Forced actually with the blue cheddar. He set a crash quite hard right there over the kink. That's just very unlucky for him. I think he did catch just too much. No, actually, I think he got caught up by Barros there and just was a little bit too far to the outside, crashed hard. Engine done, as we're back to live pictures and seeing his smoking number 30.
Taking a look back at some of the GT3s, meanwhile, scrapping. This is towards the front of the grouping so far. That is Tapia currently trying to hold on as Rosenbrock tries to make the chase right now. That's RDS iRacing team in front with FTR Esports Black in this scrap for about 15th overall so far, Jack.
Yeah, we knew this battle wasn't going anywhere, and it's very much still nose to tail for this pairing. Looking at the RDS iRacing team Porsche, it looks quite comfortable in the corners compared to what I was expecting. I have no experience in this rough, and from what I've heard, it likes to be quite tail happy, but he's controlling that car beautifully as Adolfo. But you've got to remember that FTR Esport Black BMW, I am expecting it to have the grunt out of the corners, but going on to Gahoa for the first time, I'm really looking forward to see how that GT3 reacts to the massive amount of air hitting that rear wing and seeing whether Adolfo can pull a big enough gap finishing lap 1.
Go ahead, Stefan.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is, one thing you're actually bringing up there is that the rough is a very fast car down a straight line. It actually also handles very good, as we're watching now a GT1 car for the Sprung. But yeah, that rough is really fast. It's incredibly fast for a GT3 car down a straight line, but it is really hurting in the fast turns because it doesn't have such a big rear wing. Especially, oh, there's actually a pass. The pink Corvette goes past there.
Yeah, that was a car off in the grass. That's Tyler Campbell, who's been having some struggles this lap. Had already dropped 2-3 positions in the backdrop. Car who made the move, by the way, was Mikey Olsen. So a bit of a rough lap for him, to say the very least, in that 32 machine for Campbell. Has just already lost the draft, and Ben Bukari is now slowly closing in the Blue Goose Racing machine, the former national curling competitor at the collegiate level in Canada.
Looking at it though, it looks like Erlen Bomer has lost a lot of positions. Oh, he's lost a lot of time, pardon me. He started in P11 and he's really far back compared to what I was expecting. There's massive time differentiation, not quite what I was expecting, but that Aston, I'm not sure whether Erling is struggling with that car, but he's continuing on nonetheless to cross the line for the first time now. So one of the many laps completed, 12 minutes has just elapsed. So we still have at least 60 minutes remaining. And looking at it, I think we're just about to get the first of the GT3 cars across the line.
Yes, indeed. Been a dominant run so far for Sorg Red Sport Esports, and it's the expected, known for their pedigree, Stefan, on the service. Very competitive as an organization, usually a top 15 competitor, regardless of their class type in some of the major events. We're seeing that case. Some of their classmates, meanwhile, are still scrapping in single file lines here. This is a roof, along with a Ford GT, along with a roof, trying to all scrap 1, 2, 3. They've gone back and forth a little bit in this group.
Yeah, and Kevin Fueling, the Ford we're looking at right now, he actually just lost that position all the way down up to Döttinger Höhe. So really showing what kind of pace that roof has for that. As we're going to look at the 28 GT1 car, that is stopped way wide there off the track. Aaron Kertész in that car, and seems like he just parked it.
Something's gone wrong for Cortez, with him just immediately, just for whatever reason, pulling off to the grass. He clipped the grass, missed the whole chicane there, as you see there, and ends up just stopping in the middle of the grass. He is still stuck there. So something going on with Cortez there.
Oh, Mikey Olsen spun around.
So everybody,
he had help.
So everybody's starting to have trouble here, it looks like, Jack, all of a sudden. This is a 2-car incident. Let's take a look at the GSRC replay.
So let's have a look. Going into the first corner of the Nordschleife, and he was in avoidance of one of the other cars, and then I think that's the number 49 possibly that went for a little rotation onto the Nordschleife, and I think he held a bit of lock on. Maybe didn't hold his brakes as much as Team Pepto-Bismol was expecting, and sadly collected the pink Corvette. But that's just sort of part and parcel of racing at the Nordschleife. Look at this, nose to tail through the Flugplatz, and I think that, yeah, that is just one of the characteristics of racing here at the Nordschleife. You can battle door to door, but one tiny mistake can really put pay to what could be quite a big incident.
Indeed, as Olsen's finally gone back, trying to be careful on some of the rejoins, because here's one of the main things too, Stefan, with it being so tight in some of the sections, you rejoined at the wrong time, especially with the various different classes such as these Jettas, you'll likely have some contact. Take a look right here, this Valhalla Sim Sport up towards the front, Ash Fletcher leading this specific pack, then it's Gustavo Cianfari for Kinetic Racing trying to move to the right side of the racetrack. This is towards the front straightaway, off to the first corner once again. Trying to scrap for the position. This is for P2 in the class.
The second slowest car you'll ever gonna see around this track. The only slower car is a Porsche Tractor, setting a whopping lap speed of 35 minutes. Gustavo Cianfari side by side with Ash Fletcher, and Fletcher is gonna defend at that position for right now. By the way, this lap was 11 minutes and 7 seconds for these guys. They're already about 10 seconds back on their leader, that is Jake Johansson.
Yeah, Jake Johansson known for a lot of speed on the road courses. If you watch some of the Global SimRacing Channel broadcasts, that's still the Kinetic Racing driver behind, also known for his good speed. Trying to still draft on behind and still trying to scrap in this grouping before they head back to the Nurburgring portion of this grouping here. So decent scrap amongst these two, trying to battle for a podium position early on in this race. Keep in mind the pace for them about 11 minutes. Jack, that is about only 6 estimated laps for them to try and scrap for these respective cars.
Yes, and not much time when you think about it. A lot of track, but not much time. Just behind the battle we're looking at the moment between Ash Fletcher and Gustavo, we've got a 3-car battle between the 996, the 18, and the 92. So that's George Racing Esports Team, Spoolin Racing, and Outrun Motorsports Blue. This is 3 cars now within 1 second of each other. You've got the blue 997 leading the way, going onto the Nordschleife portion of the circuit. But these Jettas, they really do rely on a bit of draft down the straights, and they are incredibly efficient. So if you're in the draft, you might even save a bit more fuel. Not enough to complete 1 full lap, as it is an extremely long lap here at the Nurburgring Nordschleife. But going onto the Nordschleife section of the circuit, it looks like Gabor Georgi leading the way has started to build up a slight little gap, which might be what you need going onto the Nordschleife section of the circuit. And with them battling nose to tail, I think it's just going to set the tone for the rest of the race.
Georgi, the lead car for this group, by the way, one of the top drivers in the Jetta RX Cup, if you remember a few weeks ago, as Ian Plash, within the back end of the Spoon Racing car. And what I'm talking about a little bit about the team affiliate here, Stefan, with Ian Plash from Outrun Motorsports, which is a streaming conglomerate that has many different streaming talents amongst this grouping, including Plash, including drivers like Blake McCandless, who also does some announcing, as well as a few others. They continue to try and grow their presence in the iRacing service to work one of their battles.
Yeah, most definitely. And one thing you have to note for is Ian Plash is probably one of the most known guys from pretty much all of streaming on iRacing, because he is doing a lot of charity events with his 24-hour solo races, as we have a side-by-side crash.
Oh, big contact, around they go. Off into the arm call goes both of them. And that got a little bit slippery there in that fight. Closed in pretty quickly. And in turn, one driver loses their back end, the other gets significant damage. Let's take a look at the replay, Jack.
Yeah, so it looked like who was that? That was Putangiera, I think, that was looking. You saw him get very close to the tail end of that Ford GT Bravery corner, and then he slaps the Armco side on and then can't get it straightened up and slowed down in time. And sadly, both of them ended up facing backwards in the wall. And I think, was that Mark Bradshaw, or am I being mistaken? Are they just two very similar coloured Ford GTs? I actually think that was Kevin Fueling that couldn't keep it in a straight line. And sadly, yep, he ended up collecting the side of one of the roughs, which is now pulled over and I think returned to the pits.
And it's a massive tow here by at least a few minutes, Stefan. Go ahead.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing there for Portanego was that Kevin Fueling didn't realize how much damage he had, and once he stomp on the brakes to slow his car down for the next corner. He just went to the right side, wasn't able to correct that in time, and that was the end to Copenhagen's race.
Taking a look, by the way, at P7 right now in GT1s. This is currently Tyler Campbell trying to hold on to this said battle. Looking like a decent scrap. Remember, Campbell had some big-time mistakes earlier on in the lap. Now is trying to hold on with a little bit of damage. Bomber from Team Vikings outside of this competition today, and to the right side. This top team heading towards the Grand Prix circuit near contact as they head towards the final chicanes.
Oh, there's contact!
And a bit of door argy-bargy. This is not looking pretty as here comes the Team Vikings car backing off.
How did he save that? That was a big hit to his left front tire. Somehow was able to save it though through the left of Tiergarten. And now he comes once again with the draft of the half-mast car in front of him. Goes through the right side, down the front stretch once again for the third time already.
Once again, back to Yokohama S towards the Mercedes Arena. Has the preferred line. And will he be able to complete the pass? Yes, with the lower tightness of the corner. Able to clear on by and trying to focus next on reeling in Brett Bukhari, who's up the road. The lap times for them in the 7:52s to 8:05s. Last time by, that's front to back as Campbell nearly pokes his way back underneath.
Lots of great racing between the pair of them, and lots of trust between them as well. There was a bit of argy-bargy, but they had the trust and the sort of know-how when to pull out of the move. Look at this, Campbell looking to the inside once again, really not being patient. He's desperate to get the move done, and maybe that is something we haven't quite addressed, and maybe Tyler has learned or knows something we don't. If you've got track position going into the Nordschleife, maybe that'll last the entire lap, and I think where we saw Erling get in front or nearly get in front previously on the Nottingham, I think that is where we're going to see a majority of the overtaking here today.
Of note, one of the Jettas, Valor SimSport Diesel Power, that's Ash Fletcher's car, was in the fight with Kinetic Racing. They have now put their car on the tow truck after being involved in an incident in said battle. They're now smoking and in said garage area with trouble. Unfortunate for them, a couple other drivers, as you can see, still there. Team Malapit, this is what happened to them, by the way. This is in the scrap we were talking about with Kinetic Racing we've seen about 5 minutes ago, Stefan.
Yeah, and I think he's going to make one of the most easiest. Yeah, he's going to do that probably through the mood curve. We're going to make that mistake. Just run a little bit too wide. Get the go. No, actually, they come together. Ooh, that was a nasty incident, actually.
And Fletcher got the worst of it. As you see, a few cars have elected also to pit who were involved in contact. We've seen Team Pepto-Bismol and KF Motorsport. They've also elected to pit this lap. Speaking, though, of Brett Bukhari, we were referring to getting reeled in. They're running away as a car is in the backdrop in the wall. That's Campbell with more trouble.
It is indeed, but Tyler Campbell, he's lost one position on the lap prior, and now he's lost even more time. He might have picked up a bit of damage on that Aston Martin GT1, which is really not what you need. It's very quick on the straight, but a bit of aero damage that can lose you a couple of miles an hour on every straight, and that can add up over the 70 minutes we've got worth of racing here. But it looks like he's continued on without too much strife. The Jetta incident we saw a little earlier on. I think Gustavo is still carrying damage aboard that Jetta, and he might even have some overheating issues as he's now coming under pressure from the George Racing Esport team, the number 996, piloted by Gabor Georgi, and going into the lap.
Sorry.
No problem, you go for it.
Yeah, the number 18 with a big mistake out of... what is that? Ice Kurve. Just goes too wide, clatters the wall as well, so he has now quite some damage. Also did lose a position to Gabor Albert Viskis in the number 9 and the number 10.
Still able to keep going, though, as we still keep an eye on this battle. This, again, is still going to be for P2 in the class. Approaching 50 minutes to go on the clock, and keep in mind, while there is no BOP adjustments, there is fuel capacity adjustments, about only 20% fuel for these cars today to ensure the one stop. And Gustavo Gianfari still holding on for the time being. Black still watching behind as they go back towards the corners once again, towards the tight Schurber Benchwarnants, heading off towards the Donninger Ho. The best chance I think Georgi can have to draft on by with that damage onto the front.
Yeah, I really do believe so. With Gustavo carrying that damage, it will slow down what very little top speed that Jetta already has, and he's pulled over to the inside and maybe decided to let Georgi in front, so maybe he can sit behind him and then pick up that draft. But we've got to remember, Plash is behind him. He will be picking up the double draft all the way down the Dottinger. You can see he's now looking to the left, dives to the left-hand side of Gustavo and picks up the position. And I think you were very much correct there, because Gustavo very much slower on the straights, even in the draft.
20 kilometers an hour, guys. That's the difference between Plush and Sian Faraye.
That is a massive difference for that speed. By the way, P5 up the road. This is overall for the class. Getting a little bit scrappy again. Hermelia trying to hold on to the right side. As again, Team Vikings making the move in a dangerous spot. Looked like Hermelia gave him the space though. Knowing the pace, this is 42 seconds back of the lead.
Great job by both of them. Much respect either side, and Bomer over the inside curb keeps that car under control and takes away that position in style.
Yeah, nice and clean despite the tightness of that section. They're currently still around the midway point of the racetrack with several of these tight corners to still develop. By the way, these cars still running a decent clip. The leaders, though, are still separated by about 3 seconds from FTR Esports. They're running in the 746s up towards the head of the group. It's still Jeffrey Bunk, who's taken off from the get-go. Really quick car today, and really confident seems for that race car, as they've just taken off from the get-go, it seems, Jay and Jack, in this Aston Martin.
They really have. They've done an absolutely brilliant job. Jeffrey Belk piloting that car perfectly in between the curbs and modulating his throttle control. As we know, these GT1s have a hell of a lot of power, so he's doing a brilliant job at keeping it on the straight and narrow and keeping it on the black stuff. But I think FTR Esports, they've been a standout drive for me so far, because the number 13 in P1, number 5 in P2, and then the final of the FTR Esports car, number 70 in P3. So they've clearly been practicing together and putting in the time, because they know how to get these Aston Martin GT1s around this track. And looking at it, the next car right the way down in P4, that's Jack Kulikowski in the first of the Chevrolets as well, right the way back. And I think he's going to go off. He just clipped the grass into the wall backwards, a big old hit, and I think that has damaged the rear end of the car quite substantially. He puts it in the wall one more time, just a kiss of the wall, reverses as carefully as he can back onto the circuit without obscuring any of the cars in the Obscure Car Challenge. Continues on. I think he lost 1 position, possibly 2 from that. Continues on, but with all that damage, he's really struggling to keep that car on the black stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he dives into the pit this lap and takes that one iRacing fast repair that he has available.
Oh, he's gonna...
Oh, that is lap traffic management that could have compounded things. And what were we just talking about at the start of the broadcast, Stefan? Traffic management that time. That poor Jetta nearly got hooked towards the front. That was Crystal for FTR Esports' Jetta entry today. Getting a little bit argy-bargy as the Blue Goose Racing car gains a spot from that.
For Kulikowski, it's actually the thing that he hit that so awkwardly, that barrier, that he has damage to his tires, to his toe, and that is why he got so squirrely on the inside there of Chauffeur. So Kulikowski really has to be careful now that he comes up to the 2 chicanes here. Might actually have to slow down quite a bit to not lose that rear end, as we're looking at Niklas Schneider, your current GT3 leader. Still the Soak Orange Esports car. Very much a dominant performance here, 13 seconds ahead of second place.
Yeah, the German sim racer really competitive here. Races in a lot of the VLN events at this racetrack with his organization, Sorg Rennsport Esports. He has been dominant so far in this car. About 13 plus seconds is the gap between him and P2. It's just been domination station for him in that BMW. Very clean, and has just taken off from Goofs and Roofs and Valhalla Sim Sport.
He's done a brilliant job. I think that that gap is going to come out even further. On the last lap, they were separated by, I think it was only around 3 seconds. Let's have a look. This time it's massively increased. Now 13 seconds between the pairing. So Sorg, Rensport Esports doing a brilliant job. Nicholas Schneider doing doing even better than his competitors in the BMW, and it seems like he's just got something else. We knew it'd be something to watch between the Roughs and the BMWs. We're now looking at the Jetters. The 996 still leading this battle between Gabor Georgski and Ian Plash, but there's still nose to tail, still within draft ranges, Ian Plash, and I don't think this battle's going to be going away anytime soon.
No, indeed, it's still a fight for second. 30 seconds behind Johansson. That is a massive gap so far. By the way, we haven't forgot about the Mustang so far. Rash Racing has ran away with their respective class after some trouble seen by the other Mustang in respective group. Still looking like, though, gonna be curious when they have to duck down here, Stefan. Do you expect them just to try and split it halfway or go as long as they can?
Well, some might actually do that, but I'm thinking most of them will pit at the end of lap 4, which I think is the most they can run here. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, Ian Plash, let's have a look if he's actually able to do something already all the way up to Mutkurve or maybe into the carousel.
See, not close enough to try and get a send quite yet. Still about 3-4 car lengths. Just seems like they're near dead even on pace in some sectors. Plash specifically has been good in these tighter corners, it seems, but the car in front has been able to gain some more time on some of the more quicker line corners and some of the straight line speed, it seems.
And obviously one thing we're not allowed to forget is these cars are about as untunable as it gets. I think the only thing you can actually change for these is the fuel load. So this is the most even car you can race on iRacing because you practically can change nothing. As Ian Plash gets a little bit closer to Georgo up ahead, but Gabor continues to be running in second place. They are, by the way, still 38 seconds already back on first place. Jake Johansson.
They'll be coming for their class and estimate 4 to go in this upcoming time by. Plash a little bit slippery trying to follow on behind. And there is a lot of elevation changes and bumps here, and we've seen it in qualifying, especially on some of the onboards, Jack. These things bounce around a lot. It was also seen for those who tune in for the Jetta RX Cup as well. They have a lot of bounce in their suspensions.
They really do, and I hate to say it, but I've got a lot of experience in these Jetters, and they really do. And I think Stefan made an amazing point about the amount of tuning you can do, or lack thereof. And yes, the fuel is the only thing you can change. So I find it's a very, very leveling car. It puts all the drivers on a very equal platform, and for the drivers to be racing this close, nose to tail, on such a challenging circuit, it just shows that we've got an absolutely great race on the go, and we've still got 40 minutes left to go, and I'm really looking forward to see how this battle succumbs.
Still at the very, very far end of the racetrack, by the way. A long ways a-ho until you reach Donninger-Ho to try and use the slipstream effect, and that's got to be important if you're Ian Plash, again, because there's still a long ways until the next passing zone. Technically for these respective cars, at least in our 20 corners. And there it goes. Into the Armco, and now another car back into the wall. Both of them have hit the Armco.
Very interesting. Who has less damage from all of that? That is the question. Seems like it might actually be Ian Plash, as Georgi is going quite a bit left and right down a straight line, and also Whiskey not too far behind those two as they battle away with their damaged cars.
And Plash now able to make the pass. And I think Plash got away with that with the least amount of damage. A bit more door damage for Georgi as a result of that contact. Really struggling now, trying to turn to the right in that tight corner, nearly pushed off the racetrack. So move Plash up to second as a result of that contact with the outside wall.
Yeah, and Georgi has wheel damage. He is struggling through those turns, struggling to keep the rear in check. As there we can see how much he has to turn right just to go straight. Ian Plash not as much damaged. You can that wheel angling, but there goes the Flash once again. Hits the wall a second time. One time ain't enough for him. He needs to go second one.
Yeah, they keep on tapping the walls for here as these tires have definitely worn out a lot. But still, there's a lot of chances for mistakes here, and we're starting to see them build up as they've been sliding the tires a lot in these corners, these two.
They really have been, and I think that's just part and parcel of driving these jetters. Before you get oversteer, you tend to get understeer until the tyres start to fade out. And you've got to remember this is a very long lap here at the Nurburgring Nordschleife, so the tyres will start to fade out. You can see how badly that Outrun Motorsports, or pardon me, the Gabor Georgi's car is crabbing down the straight. You can see it's not tracking straight at all. Picked up a lot of damage, and now we see the GT1 leaders trying to work their way through. And this is the first time we'll see the class management and the Jetters doing a brilliant job of getting out the way, albeit very, very skeptically. Jeffrey Belt managing to work his way through the traffic. They've still got two more FTR Esports cars to get through. The first one being Eduardo Gil, and then we have Ryan Chevalier to work his way through as well, and I don't think he's going to get the move done. Looking into the last part of the Dottingahoa, like you say, Stefan, Ian Flash not getting out of the way quite as quickly as I think Jeffrey Belt was looking forward to get him to do.
Yeah, Ian Flash, I think he kind of wanted to test out once again the RX capabilities of that Jet, as we've already seen here in GSRC. That car is very much capable of doing rallycross stuff, as Gil actually decides to go into pit lane.
Also take some of the Jettas with him, including Georgi as well as Plash in that result. So our first pit stop's now underway for the race. Gil pitting from second overall. They'll also join the multiple drivers who have had troubles and or crashes today, or technical issues in the pit lane. Amongst those still in the lane, famous Corp in the 33 has not made the way on the track done for the day. Sinkowski Motorsport from Global SimRacing Community Manager as well for Fanatec also has just blown their engine, just so happened in the pit lane after they had trouble getting back on the racetrack. By the way, fights are still active around the racetrack. This is for P5 in class. Tabia still trying to hold on to the spot, but now it's Tony Haynes trying to close in the JFH Plant Services yellow machine.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how these two are going to play that outcome. Dottingahoe, is one of them going to pit as well? That is a big question as well, as they already approach the end of lap number 4.
And a little bit of a cleaner car, by the way, for Haynes in the draft. The question's going to be, will these cars elect to follow suit? They're just about halfway into the event. 5 estimated laps to go this time.
And he is starting to game all the way up to Dottingahoe. Look at that speed difference, nearly 20 kilometers an hour. Tony Hayes, the yellow car, goes to the left side. Now as they go underneath the Bill Stein Bridge, and Tony Hayes makes that pass happen up to 5th place.
Majority of the drivers are now in the Grand Prix portion of the circuit. Should note that Gil just came out of the pit box after 34 seconds of service in the GT1s. These cars not going to stop this time, electing to go further. Campbell did pit this time, however, in his GT1 of note. Just about everybody else electing to stay on the racetrack for at least one more lap to try and continue to stretch the mileage.
And by the way, the GT3 car, the BMW, you were able to see ahead of Tony Hayes. That is also for position. That's 4th place, Nick Rosenbrock, the number 55 BMW. So he is also only just 2.5 seconds back on him. So he might even be able to jump another position in this car.
Keep in mind, the BMWs, Jack, are used a lot still in the VLN community, especially. We mentioned Sorg Rensport Esports runs that car a lot on some of the weekends in that German-based series. FDR Esports also showing their muscles in their respective cars for today in this respective
5th place,
series.
GT1 Fun, number 19, Brett Poncari. There we have it on screen. That is actually Hatzenbach, where he spun around.
Yes, Brett Poncari with some trouble once again in the Blue Goose Racing Machine. Hit a bit of the curbing, I think, too much there, Jack. Caused him to spin around.
Yeah, let's have a look. Going through the very tight, twisty, but very fast section. Oh, I think maybe he just changed down one extra gear. It looks like the engine braking just slowed the car down. Maybe the rear axle couldn't keep up. Let's have a look. We're right on board now through the very bumpy downhill. doing a perfect job there. Looks very normal aboard this Aston Martin GT1. Let's see what happens. And yeah, it just seems to over-rotate. And on the downshift, yep, that's what happens. So the number 19 car keeping it out the barrier, as far as I'm aware, continuing on without much damage. But if he's downshift too early, and if he's been doing that consistently, that can only lead to engine damage throughout this endurance race.
Explain the method of engine braking, Jack, in that regard, if you're trying to slow down the car.
Yeah, so the engine braking, obviously you do have your foot brakes, which are the discs or the carbon ceramics, or the drums on some cars, which are inboard of the wheels, which slow you down in the most common way. But the engine braking, when you change down a gear, the engine has got to go slower to remain in that that optimum rev range for the gear. So it slows the engine down, which in turn slows the rear axle down, which in turn slows you down. So one of the best ways to slow down your car in a race car is change down as early as you can without over revving the car. And I think all that happened in that situation for Brett Ferrari is he changed down too early, over revved the rear, and the rear axle couldn't keep up and just had to rotate the car just to get it back to an optimal range. And I'm afraid it's all too easy to do in these GT1s. So it's the first time we've seen it this race, and I'm pretty sure it probably won't be the last.
Indeed, as should note, Eduardo Gil is still now in the pit lane again for the past 2 minutes. Half Mast has also been put back into the pit lane for their respective tow. Campbell is also pulled out of said race, so a couple different of your contenders inside the top 10 for their respective class, Stefan, have had trouble in the past couple moments or so, it appears.
Yeah, most definitely, and that really brings quite some attention to all these drivers, as Eduardo Gil, I don't know what happened to him, but he actually had a coming together with Preston Rudka out of the Warsteiner Kurve. He just spun ahead of that Cheddar, and the Cheddar T-boned him, and I think that is what done it for Eduardo Gil, as we're looking at the Triple J, Jake Johansson.
And he's just torched the field today, Stefan, it seems, in this Jetta. And he's still a noteworthy name to talk about because we've seen him a lot on road course, is on the iRacing service, and in many road course events. He's flexed his muscles today as well as his 5.1 iRating.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise. Jake Johansson is quite the beast when it comes to these sort of races, and he once again shows that quite impressively, as he is leading the field by over a minute right now over Visky, who is by default second place right now because Plash and Georgi had their troubles. So Jake Johansson, I don't know, it kind of seems far-stretched, but if he continues, I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually able to lap a Cheddar or two just on pace.
Really quick driver, to say the very least, who drives a lot in this Jetta, to say the very least, in various different series. Just so happens to lead the point standings for respective series in that regard. Looking back at some of the air battles, we talked about the chance of this yellow machine reeling one in Tony Haynes. They've reeled in Rosenbrock. They're also going to have to deal with the Jetta now to the right side of the racetrack as things get tight here, Jack, once again.
Yeah, you can really see the pace of that rough, and Stefan said that the rough is very quick in a straight line. It's very much proving it, but there you see the BMW much quicker through Bravery Corner with that added aero. And now we're starting to get into the corners where aero is a must, and look at that gap slowly building up. So this is where Nick Rosenbrock really needs to put his foot to the floor and build up that gap before the Dottinger Hoa, because as soon as he gets there, you can guarantee the JFH Planet Racing machine, the bright yellow with day glow orange wheels, that rough there, that will be very much on his tail. And if these two slowly start to battle and get door to door, Adolfo Lazan for RDS, our racing team will very quickly catch up, because we know as soon as two cars start to battle, they slow each other down. And if Adolfo can leapfrog the both of them, that's going to be two positions of promoting him up into P4 or P4 in class.
Indeed, it's a bit of a push there once again in the middle of the corner with some of the aero. And they've reached Ian Plash now as well to try and dodge. At a bad time for Plash, he's now into the wall. Ian Plash still going, and another tap for Plash in his Volkswagen.
Third time's the charm minute.
And that time also avoids the air car for good measure, nearly hitting the back end. That could have been worse. Let's take a look.
Just going too wide on the marbles, and he runs it all the way out to the barrier. The only thing stopping him before the force starts So Ian Plush once again with quite some damage to his car, but I think he does not have as much damage that he has to go into pit lane. Once again, as we go and look back to Tony Hayes once again, trying to hang on to the back of Nick Rosenbrock, who obviously in that small little BMW Z4 has the power to turns, stretches away a little bit once again. 1.3 seconds was able to stretch that gap from about 3/10 that we saw. But wouldn't be surprised if Tony Hayes has gotten side by side with him come at least Yokohama here.
Wouldn't be surprised either as they're starting to make their way, in fact, towards that sector of the racetrack now, towards the Donninger home. Coming around just the other end of the right-hander, just about as broken the draft, though. Should note that Brett Bukari has this time, and a Jetta is now coming towards the front. What a massive gap grown by Rosenbrock, though, before they reach Donninger home to just about break this draft and then some.
Very much so. You saw Tony Hayes duck into the draft of that Jetta just to see whether he can pick up any little bit of advantage going down the Nottingham, and you can see that gap is slowly starting to dissipate. Not quite to the amount that I was expecting, but Tony Hayes about 5 kilometers quicker down the straight than Rosenbrock, but it looks like through the S's section where the aero matters, Rosenbrock will have those extra couple of tenths by the time they get back onto the GP section of the circuit. So Rosenbrock plants his foot to the floor and ticks off another lap here at Nurburgring, and you saw Tony Hayes dive into the pits. Adolfo has stayed out though, so Tony Hayes may be trying to make the position purely on strategy.
Should note as well, the class leader has come in and out of the pit lane as well in Sorg Rensport Esports. They took a 19.9 second stop. So fuel mileage starting to come into play here, it seems. Approaching now 28 minutes to go on the clock. See how much these drivers can stretch, especially Stefan, since you don't want to run out of fuel here. Let's put it that way.
No, if you have to save a lap, you are pretty much done for, because it is impossible to save enough fuel to make another 23 kilometers around. Yeah, to be honest, Niklas Schneider, he was so far ahead. He came out once again in 3rd place, even ahead of this battle. So he really can once again stretch his legs and continue on his dominant performance that he already put on. He has to worry a little bit about traffic. The next car in line, that would be Blue Goose Racing. That's a GT1. Although Blue Goose Racing is about 5 seconds a lap faster than Niklas, so that should be a problem.
Take a look at Feldman, by the way. He's now your class leader as a result. Once again, the Power SimSport driver looking very strong today in this car. Just so happened to win his first NEC race a week ago in the Porsche Cup class for his respective organization. Him and 2 others, as mentioned, have run in this event today for Power SimSport. Gavin Boyette was scheduled to run, the director of Valhalla, who said, even though I'm fairly confident they despise me, I'm also better than everyone else because Texas. While Fletcher was confident in his skills and is the manager of the Jetta Master Series, who we mentioned had some trouble earlier on in this race. So decent showing from Valhalla SimSport in this event today. Here, Jack.
Yeah, very much so. He's flying the flag very well, is Alexander Veldman. Just keeping that 4GT on the road is a challenge, but he's doing a brilliant job. Like you say, now in the lead. Only provisionally, though. He still has to pit, and we saw the Sorg Rensport esports car piloted by Nicholas Schneider, and I thought he might have to worry about Nick Rosenbrock for the FTR Esports Black team in the BMW, or in the sister BMW. However, that gap has very much dissipated, even though Nick is on the lighter car and on the warmer tyres potentially if Nicholas had taken tyres. But Nicholas, even with that extra fuel, he's built that gap up very nicely, and it looks like he might even be bringing down the gap to the leader very, very slowly. We've got an Aston Martin backwards in the middle of the road. I can't put my finger on who that was on first glance. That was Aaron Kurtz for the really slow motion racing team, the number 28. Let's have another look back to see what happened there, Stefan.
Yeah, as we're gonna go to the replay, just wide on entrance, and it looks like another downshift that brought a Aston Martin around. vehicle. He just lost it just like that. Seems like just a little bit too much speed and wheel angle combined, and that is what Kertész made spin around.
His second major spin of the race, by the way, that's lost some significant time. This time he's elected to put it on the tow truck and move it to the pit lane. That's a long tow for him, though. Could be to the final minutes before he gets rolling. By the way, things starting to dissipate in some of the groupings a little bit with space. Some of them starting to get a little bit tighter. This is, again, one of the George Racing esports machines. This is their other car, though, with Visky, who we referred to a couple times today. Clean so far, this car. And now is deciding to go for 4-tire drift.
Yeah, why not show a little bit off there that you are ahead right now of Georgi, as he also
And he's
goes
in the sand.
a bit RX style. There's nothing wrong with that, says Gabor Albert Visky, who, by the way, got past Georgi on screen a few moments before we had that spin from the Aston Martin. Georgi with that mistake into Hatzenbach. Yeah, very easy thing to do in the chatter. A little bit too deep and too fast.
A little bit different paint schemes from what we've seen from the General Arcs Cup, where they had nicknames on the respective license plates on the back bumpers of the respective cars. Visky now seemed to struggle a little bit after having that pass around by Georgi last time by. I kind of understand the decision if that was a call made by the teammates there, because remember, Georgi had that damage to deal with before. He's already taken his pit stop. There's less fuel, though, as well, though, in the 10 machine, who is now pulling some pace in a lot of these sections where he's not making mistakes.
Yeah, he's doing a good job at the moment to gap his teammate, but like you say, less fuel in that number 10 machine. I just had a quick look at the Rash Racing Ford Mustang, the only one we've still got out on circuit, the number 25, piloted by Daniel Rash, and he's been sliding that car around a hell of a lot using all the curbs, and now he goes onto the Dottinger, so he does get a bit of a break, but I think even though he is the only car still running in that class, he isn't going to take his foot off the loud pedal. He's going to continue on with a bit of damage aboard that Mustang, however, but he's continuing on like nothing has changed and really dragging every ounce of performance out of that Ford Mustang. It's great to see that he's still out on circuit, though.
His other competitor in the class, by the way, crashed about 43 minutes ago, as we talked about earlier on. Wonder what's going through his head, Stefan, knowing, as long as I don't have trouble, I get an official overall top 20 and a class win out of this.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Rash, he's in a really weird spot because it's the most boring race you can ever have. Because he's the only car in this class. He's now also going to pit at the end of lap number 5, which I think is going to be an 8-lap race in the Ford Mustang. Actually gonna be interested if he is gonna take tires, as Jeffrey Belk is doing that. He is your number 1 driver of this field. As he drives out of his pit stall, Rush parks his car in his pit stall.
So everyone taking their pit stop service who stretched that extra lap. Off and away he went, Belk did. He's got an 8-second gap now over his teammate. Similar pit stop times on the field mileage, but just enough to make it to the end. There are differences, though, on the pit stop versions, so to speak, or variations per class. For example, you've seen them up on all the jacks before tire change. Rash had to do it essentially left sides first, then right sides to the second spot to be able to fuel it in. So there are those differences between the cars. You also have the Jettas, which use those fuel jugs for their respective fueling sequences for that respective class as well. So there are various different pit stop methods in calls here, and different ways these classes will do said pit stops throughout the race today, Jack, that affect a lot of the timing, where if you put in a ton of practice, that's where that experience comes in to find out, okay, this is the best way to gain some time on pit road.
It really isn't. Somebody who did gain a lot of time on pit road was Erling Bomer. We saw him dive into the pits behind the Mustang of Daniel Rash, and I've just had a look back. He did not take tyres, so he's continuing on the tyres that he went into the pits with, so that will have saved him quite a nice amount of time. I don't think he gained a position out of it, but P3 overall at the moment for Erling. He's doing a good job to keep that on the road. We've just seen the FTR Esports cars dive onto the Nordschleife section of the circuit, so this is where the heat will slowly start to build up into the tyres, and the trust will slowly start to build up into the cars. We're now looking at the difference in the pit stop timing and the pit lane timing. You can see Boma was 17 seconds quicker than Belk through the pit lane. So it just shows how much time he's gained. And 17 seconds is quite a nice margin for Boma, and it also builds up an even bigger gap to the Rootfinger sim racing driver of Diego Hormilia.
Bit of trouble for Gregory Nutley as he's now crashed in the 21. We talked about him stretching another lap. That plan just went belly up as he's now crashed. Let's take a look, Stefan, after hard contact with the Armco.
Yeah, just way too fast into Schwalbenschwanz, into the right-hander of Schwalbenschwanz. That most definitely gets your race halted quite quickly. Look at that damage this car has. And yeah, Nutley just, I don't know, has a little bit of a wiggle there. Twice a wiggle, actually, on the brakes. So, very unfortunate first lap out and first lap right into the barriers. Very hard. That's going to be one faster barrier has to take. But the good thing is he isn't too far away from pit lane, so he's going to drag that car back to his crew.
Yeah, massive suspension damage as well for the contact. Yes, indeed, he did take the service as mentioned. And he's still struggling as here's an error hard crash in the middle of the racetrack. And takes the toe, believe me. Think about it, yes indeed. Does get out of the way as traffic was coming out of that next corner. By the way, the air cars have hit under the GT3 class banner. The Howard Sim Sport now in third position again, looking to reel in 4 seconds to take away P2 from the 11 car.
Yeah, so the 11 car, the Goose in Roofs, piloted by Dan Muller, still continuing now on to the Nordschleife section of the circuit. He will know that that 4 GT of Alexander Veldman is on his way. The gap has drastically come down already. So Alexander Veldman, he clearly knows something else, and he's continuing on at a rapid rate of knots. And like you mentioned, I am so glad that the JFH plant racing car did get out of the way, because like you say, Davide Ferrari was on his way and he was very much on the pace as he's only been getting quicker throughout this race. Crosses the line now to continue on, but the Goose in Roof's car still in P14 or P8 overall, pardon me, P3 in class, but he will have pressure from Alexander Veldman as the gap has come down yet again.
It's now one of the drivers, by the way, waving the Howard Sim Sport banner at this point. Under 20 minutes to go on the clock, approaching 17 minutes exactly. Still a lot to play for, mind you, because it's not just overall positions, but potential positions overall in this race entirely. While things have gone spaced out, there is the chance of many mistakes. There is the chance of many battles about to break out across the racetrack. So you can't just back it on down and calm down, Stefan. You just, again, have to be able to stay focused to make as many positions as you can, with it being essentially a sprint race, with it being an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah, this is right now a very difficult time if you are troubled with losing your focus. So you really have to keep your head down, keep yourself focused on what's at hand right now, because the others still can make mistakes, because they might lose their focus, and because of that crash or make a big mistake that loses them a lot of time, that puts them under pressure by you. So you really have to put on your A game right now, get your head down, put out the fastest laps you can do without crashing or making mistakes, obviously, and hope for the best, because we're in the closing stages already of this race.
Sure enough, a couple drivers have been reporting understeer trying to lap some of the Jettas as well. Aaron Cortez apparently was looking at his relative box at the time of his incident. As well, can update you as well on some of the fun involving one of the drivers. Eduardo Gil, after his crash, said, well, that was fun, with a crying, laughing emoji face. So can say this, the drivers are having lots of fun here on the track today, Jack. That's for sure.
They really are. And somebody who is now in for a little bit more fun is Gregory Nutley. He's got the bright yellow Porsche, or the bright yellow roof, pardon me, back out on the circuit. So even after that massive incident, he's taken the one iRacing fast repair he has available, and it's great to see that car back out on circuit. Not that you can miss it, bear in mind it's bright yellow and it's got day glow orange wheels.
Yeah, very, very bright. By the way, this has been very, very quick with the sunlight. With it being so cloudy, it's made it interesting how the sky's formed up and how the temperatures have formed up. It's not gone as hot as I think we thought it was going to be, Stefan. It's around 73 Fahrenheit, 23 degrees Celsius. That's the same air temp right now. Currently in sim time, just past 3:20 p.m.
Yeah, and the sky is, or the light is going away so fast because we also are racing on the 30th of November, so really not a lot of sunlight anyway here at the Nurburgring, as especially the Klostertal and everything in that valley on the back end of the circuit is quite deeply covered, not only by trees but also by a big mountain in the way of the sun. So these guys are probably soon gonna need their headlights to see their way.
Indeed, a bit of lost time for Johansson around the racetrack. One air car had a bit of lost time, believe it was Kevin Fueling, who had lost some additional time from 13th overall on the racetrack. Outside of that, cars have been able to keep it clean. In regards to the fueling incident, he ended up going off the racetrack and slamming the Armco again in his 777 after flying over top a rumble strip and straight into the Armco in the first corners out of the Grand Prix section of the racetrack. He's still going. It is well less than 15 minutes to go on the clock. And again, Snyder just continuing to just dominate in this field. He has the chance, in fact, with the pace he's running, to make a top 5 overall run in a GT3.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised about that. He is faster than the Blue Goose Racing. I said it accidentally the other way around the first time I talked about this. It is actually Nicolas Schneider who is faster by like 2 seconds a lap than Red Bull Curry. And that is actually quite a bit of a statement from Schneider, because normally GT1 is about 10 seconds a lap faster here.
Well, don't forget, this organization is one of those who runs in essentially the VLN, so to speak, or some of the VLN events that are held at these racetracks, where they hold a lot of 12-hour, 6-hour, 4-hour races at this track. Meanwhile, speaking of Gregory Nutley, not as much damage this time from a spin off the track in those orange rims.
Yeah, when it comes to spins, that's one of the more nicer places to spin your car, because the tires aren't that close to the track, like they were at, for example, Schwalbenschwanz, where he spun just a half a lap ago. So he gets it all around without any damage to his car.
And let's buy the Jettas to make sure he's got the space as well. And that's also the importance of the relative box on the iRacing service. You need to know if there's a car coming. There's a lot of blind corners here where if you pull up in the middle of the racetrack and don't have that up, goodbye time position and track position in that regard. By the way, we mentioned Johansson losing a bit of time. The gap between him and Flash is only about 9 seconds after a little bit of lost time for the leader in the Jettas.
Yeah, so Johansson still leading the way in the number 86 Triple J machine. However, like you say, slowly losing a slight bit of time. However, the Outrun Motorsports blue car is still carrying a lot of damage. So Ian Plash, he is going to be slightly off the pace as he's still letting by plenty of traffic. But look at Jake Johansson. He's carrying that car beautifully around the Nordschleife using all the track available to him. And I think that is just putting pay to what a good job he's done this evening.
Indeed, nice and clean at this point. The way it's been driven, trying to pull on away at this point, still even worse so in the Grip Packs engineering car. Strong run for him today, to say the very least, to be able to pull some gap as well. Platch has been able to gap Visky and Georgi in his respective position battle as well. 2 estimated laps to go for the Jettas, by the way, this upcoming time by at the stripe. For FTR Esports and the GT1s, they're expected to get the white flag the next time by the stripe. Same for Sorg Rensport Esports, who just left the Grand Prix portion of the race, while the Ford Mustang has an hour 2 laps as well, comparative to the Jettas. So, 1 to 2 more laps, depending on the class here on the board, Stefan.
Yeah, Jeffrey Belk, he is now heading all the way on the pretty much top of the track. If you look at it directionally wise, he's now via Siphon entering that in just a few moments. So yeah, 2 more laps for Belk, and I think it is pretty much for everybody 2 more laps, unless you are a Jetta that is very close to Belk right now. That might just give you a lap to go.
Meanwhile, we mentioned Fueling having trouble a couple minutes ago at one end of the racetrack on the other end. He turned it into a tin can. This thing really bounced around for at least 3-4 corners.
Yeah, Kevin Fueling doing a brilliant job of keeping it out of the first barrier, but sadly enough, collected some grass and it flung him across the circuit, firing him into the wall, not once but twice, and he's done it again. Looking at it, so he continues on, shaking the car from side to side. I think that's just struggling to keep it in a straight line, and he's really struggling to keep it in a straight line now, bouncing across the grass. I think he's hit the wall at least once or twice since we saw the replay as well. Massive amounts of damage on that car, and I wouldn't be surprised if he takes it to the tow truck. Actually, he's about to go onto the Dottinger Hoa, so I think if he can manage to get it down the straight, he'll come into the pits this time by. Obviously get the white flag, pick up the repairs, and then continue on and take the checkered flag.
It's gonna be fun once some of the cars try and reach him. There is one car heading towards Dottinger Hoa. We take a look once again at the battle. This is GT3. This is where Nutley's now cycle through, and we haven't talked too much about the car on the chase in Garzon. Sparrow Garzon trying to gain another additional position here in the 65 machine. We haven't talked about this organization too much today here, Stefan. They're one of those who had some early trouble in that respective car.
Yeah, they were one of the two cars that crashed just ahead of Stahlkurve. That was the rough and Ford GT incident, if you remember, from just a few laps ago. So Garzon, he is the second driver for that team, Team Maltrade 01714. Number 65 car. They are looking very much at gaining another position. That 7th place from JFF8 Plant Racing as they go past Cheddar of Ian Flash.
I'm going to dodge him there, and this is one of the teams here, Jack, who utilized the driver swap. Drivers were allowed to have believe it or not, as much as 16 drivers if they so chose to. A couple organizations electing to go for 2 drivers. Most of them went with 1 driver today. Garzon not able to build up enough draft to make the pass on the yellow machine up in front.
Yeah, I think you make an amazing point about utilizing the multiple driver option, and I think just having a fresh face in the car might just take a load off one of the drivers as Garzon looks to the inside. Whether that was intentional or not, we saw the car move a hell of a lot underneath him, but going around this time to collect the white flag. Look how close Garzon is now. He's under the rear wing on the run up to turn 1, down the start finish straight, almost side by side, almost overlapping. So the Team Malperi car almost there. I don't think he's going to get the move done this time by. Late on the brakes, he has a look to the outside. If he can get that slowed down, he might get it done. He's now looking for the cutback, and I don't think he's going to get the move done. But like you say, the driver swap ability is probably going to work in their favor, as it means all the pressure is taken off one of the drivers. So just having a fresh driver behind the wheel of the car can maybe bring in some unexpected pace towards the end of the race, like we're seeing.
2 to go for these cars, by the way. The 76 of Ferrari is also pulled off the racetrack, so this is now a position battle for what is for 7th in class, give or take. The sheet music logoed car of Garzon trying to sit it on the high side. They're trying to give something that allows them to sing in joy. Looking like they're stronger on corner entry, trying to late break it here. Stefan just can't get side by side to take away the line.
No, not really, and I think JFH is going to be able to stick in this position until they reach the end of the Grand Prix track, I think, or maybe Garzon is going to try something here into the education. Yes, he does! Way too late! Clips the JFH car, spins around, and he's going to wait for them on the racing lap because there's nobody behind.
And there's some respect letting the car go and taking the spot either way, moving the cones out of the way. We'll see if he gives the spot back. Yes, indeed, and that is sportsmanship right there. Knowing you made a mistake on the send and ends up letting him on go and giving back the position as a result. There have been no in-race penalties from the light stewards today, as the white flag has waved for this man, Jeffrey Boak. Leading by 10 seconds over Ryan Chevalier. He's been the king of the field today. He just ran his fastest lap as 7:48.640.
A brilliant job by Jeffrey Belk, and like you say, having set the fastest lap, continuing on 10-second gap to Chevalier, and I've just been sat here thinking, what has separated FTR Esports from everybody else? Because, like you say, the top two, both FTR Esports, Aston Martin, separated by 10 seconds, and then we take a 35-second gap back to Team Boma Racing, piloted by Erling Boma, the blue Aston Martin. So the same car, but clearly something different between those three. And I think maybe just FTR have got the edge today to continue home, as we've still got this battle going on in the Porsches. JFH still leading the way just about, but Israel Garzon not willing to let him go.
Do you blame him after losing some of the time he has and some of the mistakes he's made? Looking like he wants the best finish possible here in this respective event. Garzon, though, again, still looking quicker at this point of the race. Ran a 8-minute, 12-second time. His fastest lap for his respective car, though, is 2 seconds off of that from JFH Plant Racing's Gregory Nutley. As again, harder into the brakes to close up the gap. Warning just been given, by the way, from race control in regards to the previous contact, where they gave the position back, by the way, just given now, Stefan, to the respective car in the chase.
Yeah, and if he wouldn't have given back that position, he most definitely would have inquired a penalty there. But because he didn't let them pass again, only a warning for Israel Garzon. So no harm and no foul, pretty much. And also seems like that the JFH car can still run at their normal pace around this circuit.
This organization for a great run. Still a little bit of time, though, before they can get towards the passing zone. And keep in mind, they still have an additional lap they'll have to run here, because with the white flag still out for Belk, it's going to be a long ways away until they get to their checker flag. There's still going to be a lot of racing action for all the classes. With how this is all shaping out, the position gaps amongst these top drivers in this class for the GT1s, by the way. 1 minute 52 seconds of spread apart amongst the top 5 cars in the class today here, Jack.
Yeah, it just, I think, just shows how much else FTR Esports have brought to the table today. And yeah, like you say, a 1 minute 52 gap just in the top 5 alone. And then the next car we get back to, right the way down in P12 overall, is another FTR Esports car. That's Gary Brown. So sadly losing out very early on, but continuing on nonetheless. But I think, yeah, this time by, Jeffrey Belk will be taking the checkered flag, but like you say, still a long way to go before he gets there, as he's only about halfway around the circuit.
Keep in mind, it's likely these drivers may potentially be the last cars to take the checkered flag. So they have the pleasure of having another battle for the next 11 minutes or so. Garzon now starting to back things up as the headlights are now turned on, because we have already gone to just past 4 p.m. in sim time.
Yeah, 4 p.m. and 14 minutes. That is the time right now. Virtual standard time, of course, here in iRacing. And that's when the headlights popped on for Israel Garzon and Gregory Nutley, who made a little bit of a mistake into Stahlkurve, but not too much of a problem. Still continues ahead of Garzon as they exit the carousel.
Absolutely. One of the closest battles on the racetrack in these closing stages still, by the way. Overall, about 23-ish cars are still running towards these final few minutes in this race. If you're Garzon, though, now, how do you again time this up? Because it seems, especially in some of these corners, again, much more quicker. Almost looks like it's being held up for some of these sections. How do you time this out? Do you just wait for a mistake like that? Or do you wait until the danger hole where it's more safer, where a car's not going to shoot up from the grass on said mistake?
Well, as you can see, Garzon clearly can't pass right here through all the twisty parts of this track, so I think he's gonna make it up to Duttinger, and he doesn't need that anymore.
And an error crash for Nutley in the closing stages as he hits the arm coat for good measure. So Gregory Nutley with a bad final 20 minutes to this event. Let's take a look as he over-rotated and slid his way around the track.
Not what I was looking for. We've seen him caught out multiple times here today, and sadly this time by he couldn't do much about getting that car to the end. It would have been good to see him cross the line, but I don't think it would have been safe for anybody else. You saw the car get unsettled, fire into the wall one way, got stuck in the middle of the road, and in just desperation to get it out the way, he ended up tapping the barrier once again. But there is our leader, Jeffrey Bell, continuing on a dominating drive nonetheless, and not far for him to go. And I'm not really sure how to round up his performance into words. He's just controlled the race, and I'm not quite sure what else to say. He's done everything he has to, continued on, left his teammates behind, and just aimed for the checkered flag.
Still about another few minutes of corners to go here, Stefan. It's been almost a calm race for Belk. Hasn't really had to deal with much traffic, has been able to race through this entire circuit cleanly, very little mistakes. Quickest car on the track from the jump, especially in the long run. He's barely even fallen off in this race. How would you take this dominating performance from the 13?
Well, to be honest, I only need one word to describe his performance here today, and that is perfect. His racecraft perfect, his patience perfect, his speed perfect, his setup seems to be perfect. So, Belk all around perfect, and a very, very deserved win for him at FTR Esports.
All he has to do, though, is make it through the Dodger Hoe, through the Tier Garden, and go. Meanwhile, Diego Hermilia, I should rather say, with some trouble from the top 5. That's going to lose him the top 5 overall spot, and he's stuck on the curbs. Normally you don't see someone turtle it like that, like the 941, and that's likely going to mean a toe. That will likely result in him losing several positions. But for Jeffrey Belk, making his way down the Dodger Hoe once again towards Tier Garden for the final time. It's been a dominating run for FTR Esports' Jeffrey Belk. Has led from the get-go, ran away from the get-go, and now looks to make it through the final set of corners. He's gonna do it. At the Nurburgring, Jeffrey Belk wins by more than 10 seconds for FTR Esports. He's your winner in the GT1 class for the Obscure Car Challenge. A dominating performance for him, with his teammate and Chevalier coming home in second with a 1-2 finish for the team. The next class to take the checkered is this man, Nicholas Schneider and Jack. With that mistake, it's a top 5 run for GT3, something you rarely see.
Yeah, a brilliant job. And like you say, the number 941 sadly getting featured on the curbs in the very final stages of the race. So the Rennsport, or the Sorg Rennsport Esports BMW, will take 5th overall and P1 in class as long as he can make it to the end now. And I'm sure Nicholas Schneider will know all the way and the how to get to the end. You can see he's eased off a little bit there, just maybe taking it slightly easier, a couple of miles an hour slower every corner, just to make sure he can get it to the end. He will meet a slight final bit of traffic, possibly going down the Dottinger Hoa, but Nicholas Schneider, dominating drive, much like Jeffrey Belk. He has just led from the start, continued on. The only time he was out of the lead was during the strategy with the pit stops, but nonetheless, it doesn't take away from what a brilliant job he's done here today.
What a dominating drive. Once again, Sorg Rennsport Esports, known for their success here at the Nurburgring across the iRacing service, known as team specialist here. Schneider, one of its top drivers, and today, ends up having a lot of fun with domination. Still a bit of traffic to deal with before he takes the checker flag for Nicholas Schneider. He's pulled more than 40 seconds on the field. RPM Racing, the last car to dodge, does so as he avoids the Jetta. Final set of corners as he goes back to the GP circuit. Checker flag now waves for Sorg Rennsport Esports. Nicholas Schneider wins in the GT3 class in the Obscure Car Challenge by more than 40 seconds over Goofs and Roofs. A stellar drive for him, and still a couple laps to go for many of the other cars here, including this Mustang, who has been driving his own essentially since 20 minutes in here, Stefan. Daniel Rash just continuing to have fun. This, if he can take the checkered, be 13th overall this time by.
Yeah, and it is a little bit sad for Rash because Gregory pretty much wrecked out lap 1 in Hudson Box, so really lonely race for Daniel Rash, or so for Mustang driver FR500S as he makes his way through YouTube corner. Let's see if he's going to put on a little bit of a show for our fans. No, he's going to make it safe and nice and easy through that corner.
Still an hour, about a quarter of a racetrack here, Jack, and we haven't talked too much about him because, well, there was the 2 cars in the class. And what are your thoughts when it comes to trying to race a Ford Mustang on this service and Daniel's ability to keep it clean all race, even when jumping over through the air as we just seen on the last shots?
I think he's done a brilliant job, and personally I don't have any experience in this Ford Mustang, but from racing against them in the Volkswagen Jetta here on the iRacing service, I know they do like to get sideways and they can be quite the handful, and I think that that Rash has done a brilliant job. You can still see him, even on the final lap, sliding the car around, having an absolute howl of a time, with him being the only car in the class almost pushing the limits a little too far there. If he hit that grass, it would have fired him into the wall, and I think somebody who we've lost touch with is the triple J car piloted by Jake Johansson. He's still got half a lap to go. He's about to go into the miss section of the circuit, so towards the lower part of the circuit. He's still got, yeah, half a lap to go before he can even take the checkered flag, but Daniel Rash will get there first.
Indeed. Got to borrow a metaphor from our director Joe Peak, where it looks cool. It's definitely a cool car, I think, to try and own in real life, especially if you drive in the streets, but the way he described it was, it drives like feeding a dog medicine. For Daniel Rash, he's handled that throughout this race today. In calm, precise manners today. He'll be one of the final drivers to finish. Should note for the Jettas, Outrun Motorsports team, Flash locked into second, Visky locked into third, but for Daniel Rash, he's about to lock in what would be a top 15 finish overall in his Ford Mustang. The last driver in his class to take the checker flag. The only driver, in fact, to do so. Final corners, Daniel Rash and his white and blue Ford Mustang takes the checker flag and wins the Ford Mustangs' class today in the Obscure Car Challenge by at least 50+ minutes. And that leaves one last class leader to cross the stripe. It is Jake Johansson who continues to run away. He is, as mentioned, the last car needing to cross the stripe. All his other competitors on his same lap have already taken the checker flag because of where they were in regards to FDR Esports and where they were lapped for the overall lap totals. So Johansson just needs to take the checker flag to win the class here, Stefan.
Might have lost Stefan there in communications, but yes, Jake Johansson, all he has to do is get it to the end now, and it's almost like he's driving in a different time zone, because his fellow Jetta drivers finished in the warm light of the dusk, and it looks like Jake Johansson is pretty much finishing in the nighttime. You can see it has got very dark very quickly here at the Nordschleife, but a brilliant job nonetheless, and I think that just adds to the diversity of the conditions that the drivers have had to deal with today. They've had to drive in fairly warm temperatures, now into cooling temperatures and lesser light. Then they've had the headlights come on, which doesn't seem like much of a distraction, but when you can see it bounce, you see the light bouncing off the Armco and the trees around the circuit, it can add to the distraction of the drivers on what is a circuit which doesn't refund distraction very nicely at all. However, Jake Johansson still continuing on at full chat, doing a brilliant job, and he's still got a quarter of a lap to go.
Let's take a quick listen in for these next set of corners, and you can just hear again how much these drivers have had to wheel it and play with the throttle and brakes. you can just hear how much these tires have been sliding and some of the wind being dealt with. There's a reason they made a rallycross circuit, what SimSport did during the summertime and the springtime with this respective car. And it was very entertaining, to say the very least. For Jake Johansson, though, it's been a very dominant performance today. He ends up losing 1 lap throughout the entire race in retrospect to the overall runners. A top 15 finish overall as well for JJJ. But his organization going to be very happy with the finish today for Grip Haps X Engineering. Final corners for Jake Johansson. He's ran clean throughout the race today. No trouble, no contact, no damage throughout the day. For the man with 9 J's, he'll get to celebrate. He's the last car to take the checkered, but he is your winner of the Jetta class. Jake Johansson closes things out in the dark at the Nurburgring in the Obscure Car Challenge with the checkered flag. That is your last finisher for the race overall. What an event, to say the very least. 34 drivers take to the checkered, with Jake Johansson making his only mistake on his burnout celebration today. What a run, to say the very least, today. We'll take a look towards your race results in just a moment. You're watching the Global Sim Racing Channel, live at the virtual Nurburgring. Welcome back to the Global Sim Racing Channel. His coverage of the Obscure Car Challenge from the virtual Nurburgring. Justin Prince alongside Stefan Schlacker, Jack Worrell with Joe Peak in the director's seat. It was some absolute fun today for these many competitors. Let's take a look at how they finished today. This is the overall running order for today. FDR Esports had a 1-2 for the GT1 class to take the checker flag. It's Jeffrey Bell with the overall race victory. Team Bomber Racing with its Team Vikings driver finished in 3rd, with Blue Goose Racing in 4th. Leading the GT3s today was Sorg Rensport Esports in 5th, with Goofs and Roofs in 6th. The Honda SimSport 069 car finished in 7th, with FDR Esports Black RDS iRacing team in 8th and 9th, and FDR Esports were their respective GT1 with Gary Brown behind the wheel, rounding out your top 10 today, Stefan.
In 11th place, we had another GT1 car that was really slow motion racing. Aaron, 12th place overall, Team Malparit, which had a very big incident going into Gesamstrecke, but they still managed to gain 7 positions overall to finish in that 4th place. They were also the last car 1 lap down, finishing 1 lap down with Rootfinger Sim Racing first car 1 lap down in 13th. 14th was Valhalla SimSport 76. Rush Racing, the only Ford Mustang in this field, in 15th. Then the triple J rather, of Jake Johansson in the 86th. The first car in the Cheddars in 16th, with JFH Plant Racing 17th. 18th was KF Motorsports, 19th Outrun Motorsports Blue, and 3rd place or 20th overall, that was the Cheddar of George Racing Esports Team Green.
And then So finishing P21 overall. P4 in class was RPM Racing's Joshua Gaiman in the number 27. Spoolin Racing's Preston Rudka finished P22. Chris Sofa finished P23. P24 was Gabo Georgi, and then we get to another of the 4 GT3s, Mark Bradshaw finishing P25th overall. Gustavo Ciafarini finished P26. The first or another of the FTR GT1s was Eduardo Gil finishing P27. Half-masts Tyler Campbell finishing P28. Jack Kulikowski P29. And then Team Pepto-Bismol, the bright pink Corvette of Mikey Olsen, finished P30. And I'll hand you back over to Justin to round out the results.
Yes, indeed, some of the drivers who didn't finish today. Ash Fletcher, a contender early on in his respective class in the Jettas. Stefan Barres only made it a couple laps, with 2 drivers not even making it to the end of the first lap. Roger Gregory, Neil Senkowski among the DNFs today. Overall, a grand total of 34 drivers took the racetrack today. Swing to you first, Stefan. Your thoughts after what was, in some cases, a calm race. For others, it was a very eventful race to try and make sure they didn't stuff into the Armco.
Oh yeah, most definitely. We had our calm races of part of the races, but we also had our very exciting part of the race. And overall, we can't really complain about what you got here today, because the racing was really great. We saw quite respective racing. We also saw close quarter racing. A few incidents to put the cherries on top. So it all was there. It was a great show from everybody, and 4 very well deserved winners.
Indeed, and Jack, your thoughts, as it was a very, very entertaining event, I think, in my opinion, and it shows a lot of the speed that these cars still have on the service.
It really does, and I think just echoing what Stefan said, seeing the close racing in classes that you would never put together on first thought. You when you think multi-class racing, you maybe think the Daytona prototype, the GTE, and the GT3, but no, GT1s, GT3s, the Ford Mustang, and the Jetta. You'd never put them together, but it just shows the obscure car challenge brings those old, almost dinosaur cars back into 2020, and it shows they can still race closer than ever and produce some absolutely brilliant racing. And I think just seeing that the cars have still got the potential of some of the modern machinery that's out there, it just shows that even though they're not as popular, it doesn't mean they've lost any of their racing factor.
And as well, the niche community part, I think you can factor in as well, absolutely. Helps play into many of these teams and their strengths and weaknesses. We've seen some of them today, and in turn, you have 4 class winners take the checker flag today in the Obscure Car Challenge. We'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action here from the virtual Nurburgring. I'd also like to take the time to thank Bahara Simsport for hosting this unique and exciting event today. Are you interested in advertising with GSRC? Our channel's 1 million global monthly impressions are a great way to get your branding seen by a diverse audience. Follow the link in the description to the YouTube version of this broadcast to learn more about the Global Sim Racing Channel. I'd like to take this time then to thank the companies that provide the software and hardware for broadcasts listed up on screen. Additional thanks go to Jude Lalonde, who provides your wonderful music. Screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the great team today, and Stefan, Jack, Joe, and myself. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.stormvy.com, or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to the YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment on the Global Sim Racing Channel. We also have many upcoming races for other series now listed up on your screen, so be sure to check those out as well and mark them down your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.